Welcome to the All Access Entertainment Podcast. I am your host, Joseph Bruen, and here this week we have none other than a familiar face in the New England scene, somebody who's been around a long time, Mr. Joey Eastman. Joey, thanks for joining us.
Joe, thanks for reaching out. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I don't know. I never expect to do these, so it's fun.
Yeah, a pleasure to have you here. Kind of take a deep dive into your career and go over some of the accomplishments and things that you've been a part of and things that you've done here in pro wrestling world and especially here in New England. So,
Yeah, all about it. It's been fun. I don't know. Like New England, I've been out here longer than I was anywhere else, which makes me just feel really old.
yeah, we still got plenty of time ahead. So let's plan accordingly. But rewinding back a little bit, growing up as a kid, when did you first discover pro wrestling, and who were some of your favorites growing up?
So my parents left the TV on after watching the A Team, and it the WWF came on TV right after, and it was Mr. T. So I knew Mr. T, B.A. Baracus from the A Team. So I start watching it, and then I see King Kong Bundy. And this has got to be, I want to say it was pre WrestleMania 1 because I remember the war to settle the score. Um, so but it's such a, I was 4 years old, 4 years old. So it was such a vague thing, but I clearly remember the Mr. T coming on right after the A Team. And then growing up, my favorites, I was a Hulkamaniac. Like I loved Hulk Hogan. And then I loved Bundy. That was the real villain. And then a couple of years later, I fell in love with the Honky Tonk Man because he sang in the middle of his matches. Like that was my reasoning. I'm like, why does everybody hate this guy? He's awesome. He sings. So yeah, I loved Honky, and I loved Howard Finkel. That was the voice for me of my childhood. Like I wanted to be Howard Finkel. So big fan of Howard Finkel.
Awesome. Yeah, you mentioned King Kong Bundy. Now, obviously, one of the most iconic big men in pro wrestling. He had such a look, an amazing look. And certainly when you're watching as a child, as did I, it was just so captivating to see, his image there on the screen. And Bundy was just a larger than life person, like I said, and one of those individuals that really stick with you as a kid. You're going to remember King Kong Bundy without a doubt.
Yeah. That was the first thing that I saw. And then, you know, I I actually had this conversation in the car a couple of days ago that there are no freaks in wrestling. Like everybody now is a guy, and I start naming like Bundy. I name Kamala is probably on my Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling. Is just of favorites is Kamala. Like guys like that are gone. Killer Khan. We don't have the Great Kabuki made me cry as a child because I was afraid of him. I would come home. This is like first grade, and I would watch World Class, and Kabuki scared me so bad. And there's none of that anymore. Like there are no freaks anymore.
Right. And it's true. Yeah. I mean, everybody now is, what you see is what you get, technical wrestlers and high flyers,
Yeah.
but you don't have those beasts, those animals in the ring anymore.
Yeah. Nothing captivates a kid. Like I watch wrestling now through my son's eyes. And to me, that shows me who's actually over. John Cena is Hulk Hogan. Like that is
Yeah.
the exact equivalent. But then he's not drawn to the CM Punks. He's not drawn to people like that, it's Rey Mysterio, it's Dominic Mysterio. He loves Dominic,
Yeah.
um, because they're characters, like, but there are no monster, vicious freaks anymore.
And at what point did you start your training and decide, you know what, this is something I want to give it a shot? And how did you go about entering the business?
Yeah, my journey at the beginning of wrestling, it wasn't normal. It was actually, you know, people condemned it almost how I did it. So I was in the Navy, and there was a wrestling company, Midwest Championship Wrestling. They would run Northern Illinois, probably on a map, probably 40 minutes north of Chicago.
Okay.
And I was stationed at Great Lakes, Illinois, which was about 35 minutes north of Chicago. So these events were about 15 minutes from the naval base. I'd get a few buddies and we would go. And we, we went to a lot of the shows, and we were sort of known because we were rowdy. We were rowdy sailors that knew pro wrestling. We loved pro wrestling. And we went to an event that it was like their summer stadium show. And the promoter, his name was Brian Zenner, and he was also the Vince McMahon gimmick on the events. He was a manager, he was involved in everything. um, I was outside smoking, and he walks by, and I'm like, "Oh, Zenner, what are you doing tonight?" And he's like, "I have to ring announce because my ring announcer no showed." And I'm like, "I'll do it." He laughs and walks away, and then like 5 minutes later comes back. "Do you think you could do it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I could do that, no problem." I got up there and I did it. Like, I just, yeah, all you're doing is saying names. Like, it wasn't good, but it got through. And there was another promoter, for a company 2 hours west of Chicago called RCW, who was in the crowd. He's like, "I need a ring announcer next Saturday. Can you do it?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure." And for $20, I was there. And then for the original company, MCW, I asked if they would train me. And, I would ring announce their events for free. And they were very hesitant because, like, I was a fan. And it was still at this time, this is 2003, so it's very closed off.
Right.
And they were very hesitant, but they allowed me. Once I got in and they realized that I wasn't an idiot, that I was going to take it seriously, they really took great care of me and would show me how to bump. I wanted to be a wrestler, and the trainer, Eric Priest, he said that I was too small to be a wrestler. And it's funny because now I'm bigger than most of the guys on cards. But he's like, "You'd be a great manager." And they trained me to be a manager, got me with a guy named Carmine DeSpirito up in Milwaukee, who is, I don't know, I wish more people knew Carmine because he's so good. And then got me with a gentleman named Ed Schumann, who became like my dad in wrestling. He had a pyrotechnic license, so he would go on tour with Kiss. He would go on tour with Menudo, back in the '80s, doing their pyros.
Wow.
But he would run the NWA Midwest, with a gentleman named Buddy Sikolik, who was he owned a company called Jam Productions, which was like a competitor of Ticketmaster.
Okay.
So it was all tied in. And yeah, they just smartened me up to the business. They made sure I didn't open my mouth too much. And because my biggest problem in wrestling is once I get comfortable, my big mouth, oh, and it's still to this day, my mouth opens. And, it gets me in a lot of trouble. And they made sure that it didn't at those times.
Right. And fast forward all these years later now, you've done some ring announcing, you've done the wrestling, you've obviously been a manager all over different promotions. Do you have a favorite if you had to choose one aspect of the business?
I love managing. That is so much fun because I could still get in there and be physical. when I have to be. I like to say that I'm like one of the last bumping managers on the indies. Like I could still get in there and do everything that's needed, stay safe. I could still work a match. But there's not a lot of managers that only wrestle that can bump, or not a lot of managers that only manage, I should say, that can bump. To this day, a lot of guys are like, "Oh, I'm hurt, so I'll cut a promo or something like that." And I want to do everything. I taught myself how to throw fire this year. Like that was my big thing. Was, oh, I want to learn how to do fireballs, so I did that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very nice. Now, for fans that don't know you, why don't you tell the difference of maybe in the manager role specifically of Joey Eastman as a manager or Sydney Bacabella, your creation? Kind of give us the differences.
Um, I don't know who Joey Eastman is anymore. Like that was something I did when I was in my 20s, and I'm, 44 years old now. So like Randy Carver in Limitless Wrestling watched Joey Eastman as a kid, and he's like, I want Joey on my shows. And I did it, and I stunk the joint up because I didn't understand what Joey was. He was a loudmouth party guy that had connections, and I I didn't. It was every other manager essentially, except I was very energetic. You can see me now, like I've had 8 shots of espresso today. Like I'm constantly moving and life of the party stuff like that. Whereas Sydney Bacabella, that is a true gimmick. Sydney is an old territory wrestler that started in the 70s and was fired by every major wrestling promotion that there is. And as Joey, I have to learn wrestling history. So that way, if there is a major story that happened in wrestling and Sydney's around, Sydney can interject. Sydney can say, "Oh, I was there for that. I remember it this way." And it's complete bullshit, but it's very entertaining. And there are fans that will walk up to me and ask me a question about an old wrestler, like, tell me about Killer Carl Cox. And I will go into a story of Sydney Bacabella and Killer Carl Cox that never happened, but it actually happened. It's just that Sydney wasn't there. Like, I have to be able to throw that in. Sydney is the former WWF Hall of Famer. He was kicked out of the Hall of Fame back in the steroid trial for something involving Linda, and it's always very vague. And but that's Sydney, is he's a con artist.
Yeah. And did you basically get to the point where, you created this character from personal experiences and seeing people in the business like that,
Yeah.
basically? Yeah.
Um, Sydney is a rib. Like, okay, the Sydney that you see is not a rib. My idea for Sydney Bacabella is a rib on these wrestlers that think that they've never left their area. They've been wrestling for 10 years, 1 match a month, 2 matches a month, but they feel that they are veterans and they feel that they're, just so important in the story of pro wrestling. Si- to me, that is Sydney Bacabella. Like he is just a rib on those guys, but put that in front of the fans. The fans don't know what a rib is. The fans don't know that these people actually exist in our locker rooms. So Sydney is the former WWF Hall of Famer, and it's too. If you're insider, you get what Sydney is. If
Yeah.
you're a fan, you can still get what Sydney is.
Sure. Absolutely. Now, obviously, having all this experience under your belt as a manager over the years, are there three talents that stand out that really just meshed really well with you? If you had to pick three, top three talents that you've managed.
Number one, Channing Thomas. This is someone who I'm still with to this day. And we took him, from nobody knew him to right now he just landed in Atlanta, Georgia for an event tonight and then flies to Chicago for an event tomorrow that I'll be on. But before that he was wrestling just locally. And the idea was, I want to treat you as a star coming in. Like, let's present you as this big deal, and then it'll catch on. And it really did. Channing is, he's he and my next person I'll talk about are the two best guys I've ever managed. Because the other one is Avery Good, professional wrestler, um, Dasher Hatfield and Chikara, and we meshed so well because we were real friends. Before we started working together, we worked on opposite sides of the ring, but Avery Good, he we just wanted to work together with myself as his manager, him as a heel, and we were allowed to do that in Chikara towards the end of the Chikara time, and it was just amazing. We were able to take that all over the country, and it was an act. And I used the little foundation because he broke his leg and essentially, you know, phased out of wrestling. But I used that little foundation that I had with him for Channing Thomas. Like, hey, this worked, and it's in such a small way here. If we do this huge, I think we could really pull it off, and we have.
Yeah.
And then the other one, Max Smashmaster from Chikara. I love working with him. Or Keith Walker, who's someone probably no one knows, mid 2000s guy. Um, did a lot of stuff in Pro Wrestling Noah. He was a tag team champion with Bison Smith there. But that that pairing of the little 5'8" manager with a 6'6", 330-pound muscle head is just it works whether I was managing him or whether I was opposite him. It just always worked.
And let's talk about Shikara a little bit more in depth. Your experiences there, any memories or stories that you have from being with that promotion?
Yeah, Chikara was. I don't call what I've done in wrestling a career because I've never made millions of dollars, but my time in wrestling, I look at Chikara with these weird mom goggles almost like, oh, that was the best time in my wrestling journey. And I didn't know it at the time, but I look back on it so fondly because we were all over the place and we were learning every time we went out there. We were working with some of the biggest stars in wrestling and, selling out 3,000 people down in Philly at the Trocadero, selling out the ECW arena. It was so amazing that the first WrestleMania in New York, where they did like WrestleCade or whatever, Chikara had the largest draw out of every other independent company that weekend, and it's a true testament. So I loved Chikara. I was not a part of the school. I wasn't a part of everything down in Philly. I lived in New Hampshire. I was brought in. So if there was all this other stuff going around, I was never around it, and that made it so great for me. And I never heard anybody talking about it either. So either they hit it very well or it wasn't happening. One of the two.
And another promotion you went on to work for, Rad Pro Wrestling. What memories can you share of that promotion?
Yeah, that still going on. I'm still there. Unfortunately, Rad Pro Wrestling decided to run every day this year, the second half of the year, opposite Dreamwave. And Dreamwave gave us the dates first out in the Midwest. And we're like, well, we took those dates first. We have to be there. So, but Rad Pro Wrestling, think Chikara, but in the mid 90s, where everything is 90s based and so much thought has to go into everything that we say and do because we can't talk about our cell phones. Like we can't talk about that stuff because it wasn't around yet. And we want to keep it so true to the time. And I remember watching like the first show that they had. And I remember they asked me for my feedback, and I said, watching the wrestling, it's too modern. Like there wasn't a tope being done in match 3 back in 1995. I felt like the wrestling had to be true to the time, just like the characters were. And that's something that's gotten so much better. Um, they've been running now for 3 years. Their big event's coming up this weekend, I believe. And, you know, they they've grown, like now they're selling out their little venue that they have when they couldn't put 40 people in there. And now this event is sold out coming up. So it's really cool to have seen that grow.
Sydney Bacabella, Tony Atlas. On paper, it seems wild and crazy. Let's hear all about it.
It was wild and crazy. Like that was just this. So Randy had never booked Tony Atlas. Randy is the promoter of Limitless Wrestling, which, in my opinion, top company in New England. Draws up to 2,500 people, and he had never booked Tony Atlas in Maine. And he's like, I just have no reason to bring Tony in. And they brought him in. They were in Lewiston, Maine, at the Colisée in Lewiston, Maine. Tony lived in Lewiston, so they just had him as the guest timekeeper. I walk in, I see Tony, and then I just have this thought: we can build this. What if Tony comes in and stops me from cheating? And then it just snowballed. And Randy was like, you really think that people would care about Tony Atlas the way you think they do in 2025? And I'm like, yeah, we'll make them care. And they did. Because Tony wasn't able, Tony wasn't available for every card. So I would keep it going. I would sign every 8x10 that I signed in Maine with something disparaging about Tony Atlas. And I would always shoehorn Tony Atlas into a promo somehow in a disparaging way. And then finally, he's a surprise in their Royal Rumble and eliminates me, and I freak out. And then I keep going with the promos, and it was supposed to be a lot more. There was supposed to be an arm wrestling match that we did leading up to it, but he wasn't available that night. He was supposed to be team captain of the opposing War Games team, and he wasn't available. So I'm like, let me cut a promo. Let me cut, and I really like focused on this promo for about a week about what I would say to sell tickets. And the challenge was made, and we sold 2,500 tickets to that event at the Colisée. It was almost a sellout because they only cut it in half. They cut the arena in half, and it it was just the coolest thing. Like when I came out to Freebird, thinking that it would annoy everyone, and the fans, like, you know, they showed their appreciation, and they put up their cell phones with the lights on it and everything, and it was like for 5 seconds I'm taken out of the moment
Yeah.
of, I'm like, oh shit, what's going on? And then I'm like, get to work. And, I get back into Sydney. But Rich Palladino even said, he's like, yeah, there was like a second there where you were just confused as to what's going on. And it was so cool. And then the match happened. Tony was so happy with the match. We did the arm wrestling during the wrestling match. Tony took a bump for me, his first bump in 8 years. And he took one for me, so I was very happy. We didn't embarrass wrestling that night. Like it was a 74-year-old man and a 44-year-old manager, and we didn't do anything we shouldn't have done. We got through it, and it was so much fun.
And a promotion, let's talk about a promotion that's running on all cylinders. You mentioned Limitless Wrestling. It started quite small, like any promotion would, and it's just become unbelievable to watch. I haven't been live, but I've been following it, of course. And like you said, I mean, these huge crowds coming in, and it's consistent. The product seems to be tremendous. Tell us all about Limitless Wrestling, what they're all about.
Yeah, it's Randy Carver. Randy Carver was a ring announcer in his teenage years. I know that he ring announced an event that I was on for Mario Savoldi years and years ago, and Randy's big thing with Limitless Wrestling is he listens and trusts the talent. Like, there's a lot of uh, promoters or bookers or whatever they are that'll hand me a script and I'll laugh at it. I'm like, I can't do that. Tell me where you want to go and I will get us there. But we're going to take a few extra turns. Like, and Randy, he's just like, okay, this is the end. This is what I want in between. Make it your own and make it awesome. And he does. And we do. Randy really promotes heavily. If he's loyal to us as well. Like we're loyal to Randy. Randy is loyal to us. He takes such great care of myself, Channing Thomas, Anthony Green. Now they have me with Dijak. Like, Dijak doesn't need me as a manager, but Dijak wanted it. And Randy was like, that's an amazing idea. I wanted it. So let's do it. He trusts us. And that's the big thing is trust. Uh, It's all that entire company, Limitless Wrestling, right now, the run that we're on is just built on trust and loyalty. And we are all having so much fun. It's a very collaborative effort. So it's not just Randy, this is where it's going. It's a bunch of people that are like, okay, this will make the event better. I think the fans will like this. And those fans, they'll let us know if they don't like something, and we really listen to the people, and that's why so many of them are coming out.
Live Pro Wrestling, another great organization here in the New England scene. What are your memories of working for Live so far?
Yeah, this past weekend I did a Portuguese Royal Rumble. Like Teddy Goods. Teddy Goods is just a ball of energy all the time. Like, I I feel like I'm very energetic. Teddy blows me away. And Teddy's a promoter, Teddy's a hustler. And once again, Teddy, like, he's put together this all-star team that he trusts. And it's the best people from this place, the best people from this place. And we come in and we work live pro wrestling, and he's selling his events to schools. And we're working in front of, 1,000 people and getting a great payout because Teddy has a business model to do that. Shout out to Teddy Goods because he also fully caters all of his events with sponsors. So, like, instead of getting sponsor money that goes into his pocket, he'll go to restaurants and say, hey, sponsor us, but not with money, you know, food for the talent. Teddy cares about the talent so much. And it's it's cool to see because there are many promoters that'll run an event and the locker room is like a broom closet, and Teddy won't run those venues because we're not taken care of. It's not about running events. It's not about running a bunch of different events with Teddy. It's running quality not only for the fans but for the talent, so that way we all want to keep working there.
And what have your best fan interactions been over the years? Maybe just one or two if you could pick them out.
Um, I've had fan fights where because I'm the closest to the ring, and I'm not big like a wrestler, so fans think that they can take me. There was one in Maine where a guy pulled off my wig, and before he could realize what happened, I had him down on the floor and I'm dropping elbows on his face. Like, those aren't fun interactions. There was a woman that was screaming something at me, and I just screamed that I would take her to the Motel 6 and make a woman out of her, to which her husband jumped up. And it went viral on TikTok and Instagram. Like, it was such a fun. There's a lot more to it. Like, I'm gyrating my hips, and as he's like trying to kill me. Um, I love interactions with kids at shows. Um, I don't know. I look at wrestling through my son's eyes, like I said earlier. And I know that if my son was interacted with someone in a wrestling show, it's going to be a core memory. And I try to do that for every kid that is there. Like, they will always get something from Sydney. I I do wrestling to make people happy. And those kids, if I interact with them, they're going to want to come back.
Yeah.
And they're going, mom's buying a ticket, dad's buying a ticket, brother has to get a ticket, and that kid gets a ticket. That's 4 tickets right there because I gave them a memory. And that's what wrestling is on our level. Like, we're not the WWE, we're not working for a camera, we're working for people.
Right. And how can fans follow you? Social media or website, whether it's you or Sydney Bacabella?
Yeah, Sydney Bacabel. So Joey Eastman, very private. Like, I don't accept people on Facebook that are fans. Um, but Sydney is everywhere. So on X, he's at S Bacabella, and then every other platform, it's Bacabella WWF HOF, and Instagram, TikTok, and videos constantly. There's always something. He was starting up a wrestling company recently and stealing like the ring bell. He would steal the title belts. He stole Ricky Morton. Like, that's Sydney's. That's the content we're putting out.
Awesome. And Sydney found himself in another unique situation with Little Mean Kathleen steel cage match. Let's hear about that.
Little Mean Kathleen's my favorite wrestler. I love Little Mean. I love working with her. um, you know, that cage match was built up for over a year, but in other promotions as well. So there was a promotion where we got married, and it was like the moment of the year for IWTV was that wedding, and we took up 20 minutes with a wedding where Little Mean Kathleen, was marrying Love Doug, and then myself and Channing Thomas, come out, ruin the wedding. Channing Thomas takes her hands, but the big swerve is she needed a real man, which was Sydney Bacabella. So she married Sydney, and then we took matches all around New England. And the live pro wrestling cage match, um, it was so fun because we knew the match after us was a cage match, and they were getting blood, and they were using the cage as a weapon. So we really stuck to, we can't do what they're going to do. So let's, keep trying to escape instead. And we made it a lot of fun. And yeah, Kathleen is so awesome, so safe as well. Like, I could wrestle Little Mean Kathleen every night, but we made a pact that we're never going to wrestle each other again. Like, that was it. We're done.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, chiming in your inner fan, looking at the WWF, WWE, WCW, any of the territories, what would you say are your top three matches of all time?
That's so. Are we talking best matches or favorite matches? Because to me, that's different.
It is different. I would say favorite, personal
Okay,
favorites.
favorite matches: Dusty Rhodes against Akeem from Madison Square Garden in 1990.
That's a
Um,
deep cut right there.
yeah, one of my all-time favorite matches. My favorite match of all time, though, Boston Garden, 1986, Hulk Hogan versus Kamala. Um, it was true Hulkamania at its best, where Kamala uses Prince Iakea's shark tooth. Hogan gets color in the first couple of minutes. He's selling for 8 minutes, and then euphoric sense of Hulkamania comes over the crowd, and Hulk Hogan wins. Like, that is wrestling to me. And then a third, see, it always changes. Like, today it would be, I don't know, probably Tully Blanchard against Magnum TA, I Quit cage match. But tomorrow it could be, oh, I like Nails against Abdullah the Butcher. Like, it always changes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
No,
those two.
when it comes to Nails, one of the interesting characters in pro wrestling, obviously. How did you see how WWF? What did you? How did you perceive him as a fan early on when you were a little younger there?
Yeah. Yeah. So he came in 92. So I would have been, what, 11 years old?
Yeah.
It was the first time in a few years that I was actually scared for another wrestler. Like, they presented that as like real, and that beating, the initial beating that Nails gave Bossman, went on a little too long. Like, it was uncomfortable. And I hadn't felt that way since Bad News Brown grabbed a hammer in a Hulk Hogan match and was going to hit Hogan with a hammer. And I'm like, okay, that guy's crazy. But Nails, it was uncomfortable. And then he wrestled Virgil at that SummerSlam, and you saw that Nails couldn't wrestle, and it killed it for me. Like, they should have kept him off until the Survivor Series match with Boss Man.
Yeah.
But yeah, that debut was awesome. I loved it.
Yeah. Similar scenario. For me personally, I would have to go with Zeus. He was traumatizing as a kid, coming out of the
Yeah.
movie essentially to take down Hulkamania. That was just unbelievable.
Yeah, he was scary, and he wasn't. And I think this may go to Nails a little bit. They weren't from the wrestling world. Like, I didn't know Kevin Kelly because I wasn't watching AWA in 1990.
Right.
That was already off TV. You didn't see it, so I had no idea who Kevin Kelly was. But so Nails and Zeus weren't from wrestling; they were outsiders. Could wrestlers beat these outsiders? And they did.
Yeah, exactly. Blitzkrieg Pro, another organization that you were a part of. Any memories from there?
Yeah, I booked Blitzkrieg Pro for a long time. And then it just came down to dates. I couldn't make the events. It wasn't, it was, I had another booking. They weren't giving their bookings to me like as early as the other promoters, if that makes sense. And I'm very big on, I took you first. I'm a man of my word. I will be there. It doesn't matter. I don't do wrestling for money. Like, if I did, I'd be an idiot. I do it for fun. This is my bowling league. So if I tell you I'm going to be there, I'm going to be there. And we just couldn't get on the same page with dates. So yeah, I was done. But a lot of fun there. They had that big Cody Rhodes show, where it was Cody and Dijak that I, helped book,
Yeah.
and building that entire story up and things like that. One of my favorite memories was Zack Sabre Jr. against Joey Janela, where I gave Zack Sabre Jr. the finish, and he's like, I don't think they're going to bite on that. And then I'm like, I really think this is what we want. And Joey Janela was like, yeah, no, it'll work. And sure enough, it did. And Zack Sabre Jr. afterwards coming up to me like, you were right. Like, that really worked for this crowd. I didn't think it would, but it did. And then the other was helping a very young MJF who, was a kid just looking for bookings. And I'm like, no, there's something there. We don't know what it is. No one would have ever imagined that it would have been what it is. But I'm like, there's something there. Let's give him a microphone.
Yeah.
Let's let him, go. And the very early MJF was on Blitzkrieg Pro shows years
Wow.
ago.
And all the countless promotions and shows that you've been a part of, favorite venues that stand out over the years?
Um, So I'm a mark for buildings that things happened in. So to this day, the top three buildings, the Evansville Coliseum in Evansville, Indiana, I got to work that numerous times. Um, that one there, it was a territorial stop for the USWA back in the 80s, and Andre had his own locker area. So it was individual. In the big locker room there were individual like lockers, and there was one that was bigger than everyone else's, and Andre used to take that one to change. So of course I took that one to change because I am a mark for
Wow.
anything Andre. The Lowell Memorial Auditorium, I got to work that for Ring of Honor, and that was such a cool venue for me because wrestling history, that was the last building that Gorilla Monsoon appeared um, as the president of the WWF. Like, that was his last appearance as the president. So because he did the WrestleMania 15 appearance, but the last time he appeared as the president of the WWF was the Lowell Memorial Auditorium. So I really like that. Plus, there was that Shawn Michaels Triple H European title match that sticks in many people's heads.
Right.
And then the Coliseum in Lewiston, Maine. Um, that venue is the venue of the famous Muhammad Ali picture where he knocked out Sonny Liston. It happened at the Coliseum.
Oh,
So I love working in venues where famous things happen. Um, you know, I helped build up a very famous venue in Chicago years ago, the Bruen Eagles Club that everyone works in. It's become legendary. And, I worked there in the very early years. I was the main event of the very first sellout of the Berwyn Eagles Club. We did a 2-on-3 tables, ladders, and chairs match that I was a part of. And, like that was the first sellout. And now, you know, if you don't sell out the Berwyn Eagles Club, it's, what's wrong with you?
yeah, yeah. Chaotic Wrestling, they've been around almost 26 years now. You've been there as well. Any memories from Chaotic?
Yeah, chaotic. Being there right now, I'm actually after this, I'm heading down to Chaotic tonight. But Chaotic, when I started, I was there in 2009, and I hated it. It was a clique. I wasn't in the clique. I wasn't the cool kid. I was, and the only guys that were really like welcoming were Rick Fuller and Brian Malonis. And then over time, I became friends with everybody. But that night, Fuller knew me. But Brian Malonis was just so. It was like Brian Malonis didn't belong there. So I didn't last there long. I just didn't like it. And then 2018, I went back. Maybe that's the year. I'm really bad with years. I went back and managed Robo, and it was great. But the Robo thing had ended, and I was done. And then I just came back recently with John Walters. And if you would tell me that I'm managing Hurricane John Walters, like that's the craziest thing. And it turned into me falling in love with Chaotic. John Walters was only here for the summer, and I knew that this was another really short run that we were gonna, I was gonna be in Chaotic for a few months, go away for a few years. I fell in love with it, and I'm like, I told Chase and I told Mortar, I want to work here. I want this to be a full time booking. What do I have to do? And they just said what you just did. We would love to have you. Let's put something together. And we put something together where Sydney's a baby face with Armani Chaos, and it's working. Like
Yeah.
because it's so out of my comfort zone that it's working, and it's kind of fun. I love
Now, JCW, you find yourself pitted against Butterbean. What
it.
what an experience that must have been. Let's hear about it.
Yeah, so I had just moved out to the Northeast, to New England from Chicago, and Vito Tomaselli, I think it was Brandon, Madman Pondo, and there was, Dysfunction from Wisconsin. So they all knew me from the Midwest. They were on tour with JCW, and they needed people, like just for like squashes and things like that. And I was down there just hanging out with my friends, and I'm hanging out with Coolio, which was like that's not something you get to say, but hanging out with Coolio and things like that. And they're like, Joey, we need people. So I'm calling everybody, and everybody's like, I'm not working for the clowns. Like, no, we're not doing it. I finally convinced Vinny Marseglia, Matt Magnum, referee Rob Tuttle, and myself. We were the one, like they were the ones that showed up, and Butterbean was signing autographs across the street at a convention, and Violent J walked over there himself. And I hope it's in full gear. Like I really want him to dress as Violent. Like in my head, that's how the story went, but I don't know. But convinced Butterbean to come in and just do a quick appearance. which turned into, well, I'll knock somebody out. There's nobody to knock out. So Vito Tomaselli and Madman Pondo are like, Joey Eastman will get knocked out. And I can say I had a 53-second match with Butterbean, and he gave me a worked punch that shook my body. I could just imagine getting hit for real by Butterbean. Gave me a worked punch, gave me a big splash, and that was the match.
Tremendous. What a memory.
Yeah. It's crazy. Like, and I have this grainy little video of that match that you could barely see what's happening, but this is like 09, 2010-ish. Like, you know, it it was when I tell like there's a wrestling company in Worcester that they their big thing was running the Palladium, and they did it. And they were talking to me about it. I'm like, oh, I've already worked the Palladium. And they're like, wrestling hasn't been at the Palladium. I'm like, no, I did it for JCW. I wrestled Butterbean in the Worcester Palladium, and it was sold out. It was really cool, and I'm happy that they got to do the Palladium. But I'm like, oh yeah, yeah, that's old to me. Like that's no big deal to me. Like let's do the Boston Garden. That's bigger. And I got to do the Boston Garden, which was the coolest thing ever. Like that's amazing.
And tell us about that.
Yeah, it was AEW, and I AEW doesn't book managers as extras, and I'm like, I want to be an extra. I want to do the Boston Garden, and the show ended up being on the 20th anniversary of my first show in Rockford, Illinois, and I'm like, how cool would it be to just do the and it's just to say that I worked the Boston Garden. Like I was an extra. I wasn't on the show, but I wanted to do it. And I reach out to MJF and I'm like, hey, this is what I want. Like, this is what's going on. Can you help me out? Within an hour, I get an email from AEW like, hey, we want you as an extra. Like, it was really cool. And Orange Cassidy also had a hand in that as well. But so I get there that day, and I'm in the back seat. Channing Thomas and Little Mean Kathleen are in the front seat, and we pull up to the garage, and they're like, "Who's in your car?" And he goes, "Channing Thomas, Little Mean Kathleen, and Joey Eastman." And the guy at the security desk goes, "Joey Eastman?" And I roll down the back window. It was a referee that I had helped out 18 years before get his first couple of bookings. And he gives me a big hug and thanks me. He's like, "It's so cool that you're here." When I tell you that day at AEW was one of the coolest days in wrestling for me, I was the prettiest girl at the prom. Jeff Jarrett coming up to me. Oh my God, he calls me Tojo. I'm so happy you're here, Tojo. Like, this is so cool you're here. Everyone was so happy. And then they were doing a thing with Discovery Channel for Shark Week, and they needed somebody to dress up as the shark and go to the ring. And we're all sitting at catering, all the extras, and they ask who would want to do it. Everyone immediately looks at me, and I just stand up. I was born for this moment. And the girl laughs that I said that to. They get me in. They have me before the event starts. They do the dark matches, and then they're like, "We're gonna introduce you. You just walk around and shake hands, and that's it." As the shark, Chompy, and I'm like, "Okay, cool." So I do it. Right before I go out, I'm like, "Is there anything you want me to do?" And they said the things you should never say to me. Do whatever you want. So they introduce Chompy, and I start immediately doing the Shawn Michaels pose right on the stage. I do the Trish Stratus on the corners. I do the Razor Ramon, like all the Mark entrances as the shark. And then I'm walking around high fiving. I get to the back, and they said, Tony Khan loved that. They want you on at 8:43. So if you can get out of this and then be ready to go at 8:40, we're going to have you standing behind the announcers. And they cut to the announcers at 8:43, and I'm behind them, high-fiving with Tony Schiavone. Taz is threatening to kill me. It's one of my favorite moments because it's my 20th anniversary in the Boston Garden. I get a full introduction in the Boston Garden, but not as Joey Eastman, as a shark. And that was the most fitting, thing to my 20 years in wrestling, was I was a shark in the Boston Garden and you didn't know it was me.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, being a part of so many big moments like that, if you had to pick one, and maybe that was it, what was your number one moment in your entire career thus far?
That's so hard. Um, because I always want to say I haven't had it yet. Like I I don't I do this on such a small level. I'm so minuscule to the story of wrestling. Um, I would say the biggest thing was winning the Chikara tag team titles at the ECW arena, or winning King of Trios. Like those were the biggest the biggest moments, I would say. Also, Channing Thomas winning the Dreamwave title a few months ago, that was huge. I don't think I've had it yet though. Like I still think that some and it's because I don't care if it pops or not, that I'm like, okay, like let's just have fun and
Yeah.
let's just keep doing this until the wheels fall off.
Right, and that's exactly what you've done. You've been going and nonstop, and always reinventing yourself, and working for all these different promotions over the years, and you have all these big moments as you go on, and they're going to continue. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what's in the future for you for sure.
Yeah, like I'm just here having fun. Like I don't know, I just want to make people. I did a promo this week, but I said something real. I'm like, these parents have a shitty week at work. The kids have a hard week at school, and they're paying us $20 to take them away from that for 2 hours. Let's do that. Like let's get you away from there. And to me, that's my favorite. Is when somebody pulls the wig off and pops me, and I hear a little kid yell, "Ha ha, you're bald!" Like
Mm.
that's it for me. Like those are the big
Yeah.
moments.
What would you say is the greatest challenge of being a part of the pro wrestling industry?
I'm having to compromise my morals for acceptance in a wrestling company, which I don't do, but having that put in front of me, like, oh, there's a person on this, if I'm booked on a show and there's somebody there that has a questionable past, I'm like, I don't want to be associated with that in my real life. Like, I have a real job. I'm, a business professional. I don't ever want to compromise my morals. Like, I don't want to have a booker ask me to do something that I, as a human being, disagree with. Like, I won't do certain things. And it's because, like, I don't think I've ever, in all of the matches that I had with Kathleen, I don't think I ever threw a punch in those matches. Like,
Yeah.
those are things that I won't do. And, I, compromising my morals for $100, I'm a jerk. I won't do it. So we'll let somebody else do it. Anybody can do it. I'm just as happy sitting on my couch with my wife and son as I am in any arena in the country, and I could do both. They're interchangeable to me. It's the same happiness feeling.
Yeah. TRP, Top Row Promotions, another promotion you've been a part of. Memories from that promotion.
Yeah, that was the promotion that I started watching as a fan back in 1989. Joe Eugenio ran it, and I lived across the street from the venue in New Bedford, and I would go every other week. Getting to work there was such a cool thing because they put me with Nick Steele, who I watched as, a child. They put me with Pat Garrett, who him and Rick Fuller and Shockwave were my favorite wrestlers in all of wrestling. Like I was more into it was Yankee Pro at the time, but I was more into Top Rope than I was the WWF. So getting to work there with those people, like those, to me, they're legends. Like they are legends. They're heroes. Those are the people. Like that was invaluable to me.
Yeah. And a promotion that really took New England by storm, Beyond Wrestling. You've been a part of Beyond, of course, and let's hear about your experiences there. They've really, over the years, really established themselves for sure.
Yeah, they've got a thing going, and they what they do is completely different than everyone else, and you can look at it from not having chairs in the crowd. I don't work there anymore, and the thing that I miss the most, like I don't have that fear of missing out. Um, I have the fear of missing the camaraderie with the fans. Like their fans of Beyond are more than fans, if that makes sense. Like uh, there I message, like I don't message people that often, but like fans from Beyond will message me and just say, "Hey, we miss you. When are you coming back?" And I just have conversations with them. Like I don't mention that I'm not there or anything like that. Nothing bad happened. Like there's no dirt, there's nothing. They run every Thursday. And for me to get out of work at 4 or 5 o'clock, drive to Worcester, which is 90 minutes, do the event, and then get home at 1 in the morning and get up to go back to my office the next morning. I was just really tired. I don't want to do it. So, there's no heat there. We talk, like we don't hate each other. I just don't want to do it. It's not wrestling that I want to do. They're getting people ready for the WWE. Um, I don't want to go to the WWE. That's not fun to me. That's work. I want to have fun. Like let's have fun. Let's do it without a safety net. We're not scripting anything. We are going out there and we're working. That's wrestling to me. That's what fun is. But no, they're doing great in Worcester. Um, I'm they're doing like 5,000 shows this year, it feels like. So good for them.
Yeah. Now, what can you tell us about Wrestling is Art?
Was that the Rhode Island one?
Yeah.
Because there were a bunch of them. Okay. So essentially, Chikara goes out of business in the storyline, but little sleeper cell wrestling companies start popping up around the country. One of them was Wrestling is Art, and they ran out of Rhode Island. I think they had Funaki that weekend. Tommaso was on those, and essentially, it was Wrestling is, but all of the next words spelled out Chikara. So it was Wrestling is Cool, Wrestling is Heart. Um, Hart was in Indiana. Um, you know, I don't remember what they are now, but they all there was a bunch of them, and it spelled out Chikara, and it took fans like 4 months to realize that it spelled that all the wrestling is spelled out Chikara.
Yeah. Another promotion, PWS, Pro Wrestling Super Show that you worked with.
Yeah, Ryan Drew, Brockton, Mass, the most vile, vulgar crowd you'll ever work in front of. And like Ryan Drew would tell us, nobody swear, no, like you're not allowed to swear on the shows, nothing vulgar. And then the things that children and adults said to me was just like, and I can't fire back at that. Like, oh my god, it was wild. You know, you always felt like you had to fight your way, or at least for me, anyways, fight my way from the ring to the back. Like people hated us. And it was myself and Channing Thomas. They hated us. And now Channing Thomas is a huge baby face there. So that's awesome. But Ryan Drew, I love Ryan Drew. I think that he doesn't get the credit he deserves in all of professional wrestling, for being an amazing trainer, for being an amazing mind to wrestling, and just dedicating. Because if you knew how much Ryan Drew lost to entertain the fans of Brockton, because they don't have a lot there, Ryan Drew is like he's like a saint in a lot of ways. And without Ryan Drew, all those people in Brockton wouldn't have their wrestling, and they look forward to their wrestling.
Yeah. Let's talk about Mount Rushmore. There's different ways of looking at it, obviously. Most successful, best wrestlers, biggest impact in the industry, personal favorites, however way you want to look at it. what would you say is your Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling? And we're going to do both sides of it, but for television, WWF side of it, WCW.
Okay, WWF. I I don't know. I had this conversation like on a car ride. We were talking about this, and they said some names, and I'm like, all right, whatever. I think it begins and ends with Vince McMahon. Like that is number one. Without Vince, you never had that boom. And then on Mount Rushmore, you have like a George Washington type figure, which would be Bruno Sammartino. And then Hulk Hogan is number three, Stone Cold Steve Austin, because he was the reason. It was like the reason for the booms. And if you're going to take out any one of them, I would take out Bruno and put in Andre the Giant in his place. Those are the two that are interchangeable to me because Andre was so recognizable. But those three, Vince, Bruno, Hogan, Austin, they were responsible for the biggest booms of business at the time.
And that's interesting. It's very interesting because I've never heard, I ask this question all the time, and I've never heard of somebody putting a promoter on there. And it makes perfect sense. I mean, there wouldn't be anything without Vince, but I've never
Yeah.
heard that before. It's interesting.
And he was also the top heel in the 90s. Like during the boom, Vince was a character as well.
Right.
Because I always fight with people about who the best heels of the 90s were, because I'm like, Vince is always number one. Bob Backlund is the number two heel of the 90s. And people fight with me on that. I'm like, no, Crazy Bob, you didn't live Crazy Bob Backlund. But yeah, Vince definitely goes up there because without Vince, all that money wasn't made for the other guys with the exception of Bruno.
Right. And Vincent Austin, I mean, it doesn't get any more captivating than that, just
No,
great TV. So the other
no.
side of things, when it comes to Mount Rushmore, New England specifically, let's hear your Mount Rushmore for men and your Mount Rushmore for women of New England.
Oh, that I've never been asked this for New England. So New England, I never met the guy, but probably Tony Rumble. Like that's the one that I always hear is so important to New England. Man, that's really like Tony Rumble definitely goes up there. Um, wow, I would say guys like Rick Fuller. Definitely Rick Fuller is up there. I'm thinking of areas, so probably the New Bedford area would be Sweet Scott Ashworth. Like that, it to me, Sweet Scott Ashworth is like, I don't know, he's an enigma down there.
Yeah.
And then Tony Atlas. I would put Tony on the New England Mount Rushmore because not for nothing, for a long time when you booked Tony, your houses went up. So he was still a draw. I would definitely put him on there as well. And then for women, Nikki Rocks, Ariel, Sandy Starr, man, those are the big three. Oh, Mistress Belmont,
Yeah.
who I also don't believe gets enough credit. And yeah, also Mount Rushmore's. I'm putting Jeff Costa, Lobster Man, on there. Just like we're adding a fifth for Lobster Man because he's yeah the wild and crazy Lobster Man. eh, There's nothing better than that. Like a lot of people have their opinions about Jeff. Um, you know, the man is insane in the most beautiful way, and I love it.
Yeah. And obviously, with all these different promotions that you've worked for, you've been heavily involved in some and some just kind of making appearances. So, it may differ. But if you had to pick one, is there a favorite promotion that you've worked for?
Um, in New England, it's probably Limitless. Um, it, I love Limitless Wrestling. I don't. I haven't been at Chaotic long enough. Like right now, it's like the new boyfriend and girlfriend type thing. So like, oh, everything's great. I enjoyed Beyond. I really did.
Yeah.
The wedding stuff. I wrestled Hornswoggle in a WLC match. I wrestled Matt Tremont. Like these are things I shouldn't be doing. So yeah, I really enjoy those. I love working for Teddy Goods. That is just so much fun. If I had to put them in order, it would be Limitless is like the number one, Beyond number two, Chaotic, or I'm sorry, Chaotic number two, Beyond three, Teddy Goods four. Like, in terms of just draw and the talent that they bring in and things like that.
And what memories do you have of UFO wrestling and working against Tommaso Ciampa?
Oh, I have no memories of it. I got knocked out. We did it wasn't Tommaso's fault either. So I knocked myself out.
Wow.
So I only know that it happened because I've watched the match, the unedited match back. So we called the Ultimate Warrior Gorilla Press, and I get up there. I don't know why I did it, but it was like muscle memory almost. And I tucked thinking that it was going to slam me. And when he walked out from under me head first, right onto the mat, I knocked myself out. It's the grossest. Like, I've seen it. It's disgusting. Um, and then he pinned me. It was a tar and feather match. So I still had to get tarred and feathered. So I don't remember this, but evidently Tommaso said, or I said to Tommaso, you better effing tar and feather me. I have no recollection of that at all. So he drags me. I can't walk, drags me over, pours it all on me, dumps the feathers on me, and I start standing up and start selling the tar and feathers. I don't remember that at all, other than watching the video. Like, I was unconscious while that was happening.
Wow.
So yeah, no memories of that match.
Oh, man. Now, what was the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
Shut up. That was always, and I heard it so much. Shut up, shut up. And another one that, it was how important loyalty is to the right people in wrestling, because there's not a lot of loyalty in wrestling. So the people that are talked about the fondest in wrestling are the loyal people. They were loyal to their guys, and it. I was always told, take care of the people that took care of you, and always be good to them, and just don't be an asshole. I had a reputation for a while that I was an asshole, and I was, and it took getting old, you know, um, it, to go and realize how I affected people's time in wrestling. And it was me trying to be funny. It was me trying to be cool. And I legit went back and apologized to everybody that I could remember. And then when people popped up over the years, no, he's an asshole, I would ask them what I did. And then I would genuinely apologize for it, because that Joey Eastman that was doing that is not the Joey Eastman, of 2017 to today. And I wasn't a big drinker. I was an asshole. Like, I was trying to be cool. And, that was something that took me a long time to realize that I was doing it, but then to apologize and get the reputation in wrestling that I wanted, which is, oh no, he's actually very helpful and, wants to see everybody succeed. Yeah, so don't be an asshole. That was a big thing.
And then, if you could add to that advice that you received or put your personal spin on it, what advice could you give to somebody that's looking to get into the business now?
Um, Take it seriously. The people that get signed by the WWE or AEW, they have this they have this drive in them that, like, a high school athlete or a college athlete has, where it's a little more than the kid in the drama club. So if you if you want to do it, put everything in, but get do wrestling for you. Don't do wrestling. Don't get disappointed if you don't make it, because that kid that watched pro wrestling, they are so happy and think it's so cool that you even got in a wrestling ring in a VFW in front of 25 people. Your story is your story and no one else's. And make it yours. Like, go do your wrestling the way you want to do it, not the way anybody else wants it.
Right. Bouncing back to Mount Rushmore, being an established manager yourself, what would you say is your Mount Rushmore of the managers in the WWF? And then on the flip side of that, Mount Rushmore of New England managers over time.
Yeah, I think Mount Rushmore in the WWF. Um, Bobby Davis is number. He's got that George Washington spot where like he was the original wrestling manager. Bobby Heenan, of course, like Bobby Heenan. And then these here may be a little controversial. Lou Albano, just for the amount of tag team championships he won, and that he was a draw. Like he was a huge draw. And then um, Fred Blassie, because in that time, in that golden age, Fred Blassie was the only manager that managed the world champion in like the 80s, like, Fred Blassie with the Iron Sheik. So I always put Fred Blassie up there just for that 2 week run, but he did it. In the 90s, Mr. Fuji managed the champion, but it was a different time. The houses were down at that time.
Right.
In New England, wow. Johnny Fabulous, John Cena Sr. Like managers are weird. There's like this there was always this professional like, hatred towards each other. Like, oh, I want to be the manager. I want to be the manager. And I was always the guy that wasn't like I wanted to be on shows with all the managers. Because that's what I grew up with in the WWF. Like they were all on the shows.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love Johnny Fab. I get along great with J Fab. I think he's just such a nice guy, and the chances of us talking about wrestling when we're together are slim. We talk about anything else. Like we're, I'm a very old soul, so I think John, for what he's done, is very impressive. Marshall McNeil, man, Marshall McNeil. I wish I could do athletically what Marshall McNeil can do. He is so good. Always enjoy working with and watching Marshall. Sean Gorman. Um, I would put Sean Gorman up there for his promos. That guy, he was funny in a way that you hated, and I can truly appreciate, you know, Sean Gorman. And then a fourth, man, Joe Ribello. That's a deep cut from New Bedford, but I loved Joe Ribello as a little kid. He only worked in New Bedford, so maybe he isn't Mount Rushmore material, but for me in New England, Joe Ribello, I really liked him.
Is he the one with the martial arts background?
Yeah, Kempo Joe.
Yeah.
Just had a stroke. And it's
Oh.
funny because Teddy Goods' show this past Sunday, I did the thing where Johnny Fabulous bumped me and I laid out until all the fans left. And Joe Ribello had a stroke a couple of weeks ago, and I messaged him and, sending my well wishes. He was at the show and he comes up to me as I'm laid out. And he's like, hey, I know you're in the gimmick and you can't see me, but I just want to let you know it's Joe Ribello and I'm here and I'm so happy to see you. And I just like I was in a Santa suit, so I put the beard over my mouth, and I just kept my eyes closed. And I was just so appreciative that he was there. Like it was scary. We almost lost Kenpo Joe, and the fact that he knows who I am, because if he understood how much I loved wrestling and how much I hated him as a kid, like it's cool to me that those guys now know who I am.
Yeah. Favorite era of pro wrestling, if you had to pick one?
My sweet spot is 89 to 92. That is, I love 1992 is my favorite year in pro wrestling for the WWF because it was completely different by the end than it was the beginning. At the beginning, you had Hogan, you had Warrior, you had everybody. And then by the end, it's like, we got Bret Hart, we got Shawn Michaels, we barely have Ric Flair at this point so the entire company was like you had Sid at the beginning of 92 At the end of 92, there's no Sid, so it's completely different. And it shows how Vince worked on the fly in that time with because he'd been hitting home runs. And now you got to hit a couple of doubles. And he did. So 92 is my favorite year in wrestling, but my favorite era is definitely like 89 to 92 is what I always say, but you could throw 93 in there as well because you got Doink the Clown, and I love him.
Nice. Now,
Yep.
without being date specific, what is next for Joey Eastman?
Um, I don't know. Like, I whatever. I'm just here. My wife says it's my bowling league, and I've really adopted um that mentality that I'm here to have fun and help out the younger generations to not make the mistakes that I did and you know to with merch like teaching them, hey, this is how you sell merch at the merch table, this is how you do this, like the little things that a lot of wrestling schools don't teach, even promos, like a lot of wrestling schools don't teach a good strong promo. So I'm here until the fans tell me they don't want me anymore. um, After every match, if I have a spot, I'll always ask everybody involved in the match, how was my timing? Was I safe? Did I mess you up? Because I'm almost twice the age of most of the people now. And if my performance is being a hindrance to what they're doing, I'll just stay home. Like I don't want to ruin your shot because I'm having fun. Like I'll stay home. Well, I'll stop when I stop adding something to the event.
Yeah. And I know you say it's your bowling league, but fast forward years from now, what do you want your legacy to be? How do you want to be remembered?
Um, I've never thought of that. I in amongst the talent in wrestling, I want them to say he was very helpful. Like he helped me get here. I reached out to him and he got me booked here and didn't expect anything at all in return. um, because I was given that opportunity when I started, where Eddie Schumann helped me get booked. Um, and Eddie Schumann is like my dad in wrestling. So for for me to be able to do that to this generation now, I would love for people in wrestling to say, no, he he just wanted to help. And he made us laugh. He was a little crazy. I always love when people think I'm really crazy. It's awesome. Um, and amongst the fans, I want and this is right now, I just want to be the one person they remembered on the show. Like you're going to see so many things, but I want them to remember the guy in the wig. I want them to remember, what I did. I want them to say, "No, he made us laugh. No, we hated him." I just want them to remember me. That's all.
Yeah. Well, Joey, thank you so much for being here, the All Access podcast. It's been our pleasure to have you. And for
Yeah.
Joseph Bruen and Joey Eastman, it's the All Access Entertainment Podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next time. Joey, thank you so much.